My name is Daniel Vogt. In the U.S., people call me Dan or Father Dan. In Guatemala, I'm called Padre Daniel. I'm a native of St. Charles, Missouri. Went through basically Catholic grade school, Chaminade for high school, St. Louis University. Graduated from St. Louis University with a degree in accounting. Went to work for a large CPA firm. Worked as a CPA for a number of years. And while working as a CPA, I jokingly say that in my reincarnation, I'd like to be an archaeologist. And so I came to Guatemala in 1978 when I was 22 years old to see the Mayan ruins. I had never been to Guatemala, never been to the third world. I'd been to Europe, different times, but I'd never been to the third world. And I was just really shocked. I mean, just the poverty, the need, and also just the beauty. There's a natural beauty here that's unbelievable. And as time went on and different things happened in my life, I finally decided, well, I'm going to make the plunge when I was 26 years old to quit work and try the possibility of being a missionary. So I did that. I joined an order called the Claretian Missionaries, mainly because they had a mission in Guatemala. And I really thought when I came, I thought it was coming for 1 year. And here I am more than 35 years later. And I've been pastor of 3 parishes. All the time that I've been in Guatemala, because of the tremendous human need, I've always been involved in trying to get people to help, get other people to help, because there's so much to do, and there's few people who are willing to really get their hands dirty and get into it. I've never been a priest much for buildings, because most of the times what people they don't really need buildings. What they need are services, and they also need to be trained, and so I became involved with a lot of those kinds of projects. Where I've seen the least positive change is in the area of healthcare. It's still just pathetic. Honestly, just pathetic. So we began with projects that had to do basically with providing people with clean drinking water. We started really small. We were able to get a little bit of money, they kind of start building a few filters and things like that. And they really took off. We've installed thousands of filters. And that's just primary. If we're going to talk about health, we can do whatever you want. If people don't have clean drinking water, they're not going to get healthy. So that's just a key factor. By and large, in rural areas, there are no running water systems. In other words, people still rely on creeks and rivers to get their water. And they go down the river, and that's where they bathe, and that's where they wash their clothes, and that's where they wash their dishes, and then they take jugs of water home for cooking and for consumption, which ultimately drinking impure water is really the principal cause of infant and child malnutrition. A child that's chronically got stomach problems will also have other kinds of ailments. It's a compounding factor that ultimately can lead, in a worst case situation, could lead even to death. So, drinking water is key. One of the things I still remember from my very first visit back in 78 here was just the issue of people, living on homes with dirt floors. And in a tropical climate, dirt floors is just another breeding ground for contamination and infection and things like that. And a concrete floor could be considered relatively expensive. So we began also a project where we would help subsidize. If people have to give part of what a floor would cost. And the idea then is that you really got a floor that children are safe. And of course, if they don't have a water filter, we add a water filter into the whole packet. Then the other thing that kind of goes along with that is what we call a flush latrine. The traditional latrines, outhouses, are breeding grounds for flies and other kinds of animals. And so instead of just the regular hole in the ground, we provide like a toilet seat, and it's connected to a double plastic barrel system, whereby the wastes go from one to another, but there's a trap so that nothing can come back out. In 2022, as things have opened up, there are 2 other projects. And one is, again, that there just aren't enough people who are prepared, trained to do any kind of health work in rural areas. And so I was familiar with a program for training health workers from years ago, which was called a book called Where There's Not a Doctor. And it's kind of like a handbook was used for 30 years. It's like a guide for training people, and it's just a good reference book. But I found out that there was also a newer edition specifically aimed towards women, and we could get it in Spanish. And so we based a course, a 2-year course on that book, how to train health workers with that book. So we've done that first year, 2022, with 21 rural women, and we will expand in 2023. Number two was that in late 2020, our area was hit by back-to-back tropical storms that had been hurricanes. It was Ida and Iota, lots of flooding all over the place, roads out. But among the issues that we faced was a lot of people who had to live in temporary shelters for significant periods of time. The entire family living in a school or a gym for months. And just the trauma of losing your home, and then having to live, in a barn, just all crowded together. So there were 3 young psychologists who I've known over the years who came to me and asked about the possibility of trying to set up a psychological counseling center, but also the work not only just bringing people in, but going out, like going to villages and going to communities, going to families. It's really breaking the ice. It's a taboo topic, and so we deal with that. I consider it to be also a very worthwhile service. It's not infrequent that I have young people who, in the context of confession, who talk about wanting to kill themselves. I would invite anybody who's interested in helping the brothers and sisters in Guatemala, in rural Guatemala, to go to our website, which is qpworks.org. qpworks.org. And the name of our organization is Kekchi Partners. It's just recently been updated. It gives a number of options for how you can give, either ongoing or one-time giving, but as well, there's a lot of stories, a lot of interesting stories, I think, that are on there about the work that we're doing. And finally, actually, there's a section called the 35-Year Fund, which is something I want to do as a personal mission after 35 years of being here. I know I'm not going to be here another 35. The idea is to try to raise $150,000 to have an ongoing fund, like an endowment, a small endowment to help young Guatemalans, rural Guatemalans have access to both higher education and also the trade schools. Here in Guatemala, higher education is still a rarity. Poor people have little access. And trade schools, although tend not to be expensive, but again, they tend to be located in urban areas. So rural people don't have access. Or if you're going to go, that means you're going to pay where to live and where to eat and things like that. So the idea of this is to be able to have a fund, to be able to help people. Kekchi Partners got started in 2003. We don't pay any salaries. The other co-founder of the organization is really the guy who takes care of this kind of stuff because we're still small. Our administrative costs are minimal. For those people who've already given, I want to say, first of all, thank you. You've made it possible that we're here this far. Some people have given, consistently over the years. But all of this, everything we do is made possible because of donations. I do some grant writing as well, but by and large, our major source of funds has been donations. It's our obligation as Christians to help one another, to recognize Christ in that person in need. And many times it's easy to forget. So this is an opportunity, an invitation to put the gospel in practice. Thank you.